Dear learners, I am Christina Georgy, your academic counselor for the course code BEGC-133, which is titled British Literature. So before proceeding further, let me remind you that this is a specialized session specifically designed for the BEG learners, that is the BEG second year learners. Hence, all the aspects discussed here will be solely based on or limited to the prescribed syllabus and study material for BEGC 133, that is British Literature. As per the requests of some of our learners, I will be recording this session. So today we will focus our attention towards one of the most important aspects that are involved in your TEE preparation. Now that you are second year students, you have an idea regarding how to go about your TEE. But with respect to this particular course code, it is equally important for you to be familiar with the question pattern. Very often the question pattern would be surprising for those students who are not used to the previous question papers. For that matter, let me remind you that it is of great importance to have a look at the previous question papers. The reason is that it could actually help you have an idea regarding the question types, question patterns, if there are repeated questions, all those things you will have an idea about. Secondly, that would of course help you prepare more effectively, in the sense if you are lucky enough, you will find more or less similar questions even for the TEE that you will be attempting. Alright, so considering the importance of referring the previous question paper, I will share the very recent TEE question paper with you, that is the latest TEE question paper for BEGC 133. So let me take a minute to share the screen with you. Is the screen visible? So now you see on screen the December 2022 TEE question paper on BEGC 133 British Literature. Dear ones, the first thing that I would like to remind you is that once you receive the question paper, make sure that you check whether all the pages are printed. Very often, students won't read the question paper in advance, in the sense they would be so much tense that they would start writing at the very minute or the second they receive the question paper. Please don't do that, for you have enough and more time to complete your answer paper. That is, the total time allotted for this is 3 hours. You have enough and more time to complete. Remember, the maximum marks is 100. Very often students are confused whether this paper is for 50 or 100. For that matter, be sure that you read the question paper thoroughly. All the necessary information will be provided in your question paper. See, this is a sample paper. And another aspect, despite checking whether all pages are printed, you need to see whether the course code and program code are correct. The reason why I am telling you this is because, see, being second year students, you must be familiar with this. That is, in your respective classroom, that is at your study center, there will be very many program codes and their examinations would be happening. And even in the classroom that you will be sitting, there will be other students writing other program codes. So there is this probability of having any kind of mistake or misunderstanding with respect to course codes. For that matter, please make sure that you study your course code and also your program code. Program code would be known to you. You would be aware of your own program. Nevertheless, course codes can be confusing. Remember, our course code is BEGC 133. There are some other papers that you study. For example, BEGC 134. For that course code, the interesting aspect is that it is the same paper that is actually dealt for some other batches. Say for BEGH third year students, we have the same paper with a different course code, but the course title would be the same. So in such cases there could be confusions. So when you get your question paper, make sure that you check whether you have received the correct question paper. I was saying it is of great importance to be clear about the course that you are attending. For example, there is another batch, that is BEGC third year batch, who has the same paper as if a different course code. In the sense, the course title and the content is very much the same, but they have different course title from yours. So I'm referring to the course BEGC-134. So under such circumstances, there are chances of mistakes happening. So please be aware of the situation and check whether you have received the correct course codes and course titles. So that's all regarding the basics to go about before actually starting to write your answers. So moving back to this particular question paper, December 2022 TEE. See, make sure that you read the instructions correctly. It is written answer all questions. You'll have to write all the questions. All questions are compulsory. So the common doubt would be, should I attempt all the questions? Am I not allowed to leave at least one question? Of course you have options. What they are meant is that within questions there are sub-questions. And from these sub-questions you can leave one question. Nevertheless, when you consider everything together, you will have to attempt all the questions. For example, this would be question 1. Within question 1 itself, you have sub-questions. So these would be the sub-questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You will have 5 sub-questions within question 1. And from these 5 questions, you can choose and write. Similarly, this would be question 2. And within question 2, you have around 5 sub-questions. And from these sub-questions, you can choose and write. And finally, you have 2 more questions. Question 3. From question 3 also, you can choose and write from those sub-questions available. And lastly, you have question 4. So there would be a total of 4 questions. Remember, there are enough and more sub-questions. And you won't be having many choices, to be honest. We'll discuss that in course of time. Now let's have a look at the question pattern. So I'll give you a brief introduction regarding the question pattern. Firstly, you'll have essay questions, long essay. There are short essays to write, and you also have passages given, and you will have to explain the passages. So the first question that you see in your question paper would be regarding passages. Here, have a look at this question, question number 1. Explain any 4 of the following passages with reference to the context in around 150 words. So it's basically annotation questions. In the sense, they have given you a passage and you will have to explain this passage. I suppose you follow me. Okay, so within this question 1, you have 5 questions, and out of the 5 questions, you just have to choose 4. In the sense, you have just one option to leave. Remember, 4 out of 5. You are free to leave 1 out of 5, but you must be writing 4 out of 5. Now the question is, how many marks will be allotted to each question? That is clearly given here. 4 into 8. That is, you'll have to write 4 questions, 8 mark each, and in total you'll receive 32 marks. But how much will you be able to score out of 32 will be the real challenge ahead of you. Alright, I suppose you are clear about this. Now, regarding the word limit, it is clearly mentioned that you should write in around 150 words. So dear learners, when word count is mentioned, you will have to pay attention towards it. In the sense, they mention in around 150 words, which means you shouldn't write short of 150 words. So the relevant question would be, how long should I write? See, to be very honest, it depends on your handwriting. You will have to have an idea regarding your own handwriting. By 150 words, how many lines will you be writing? That you need to have an idea. One suggestion that I would put forth is that it should be around 1 page at least. What matters is the content rather than the page count or the word count. But as this word count is mentioned here, make sure that you stick around it. You're free to write more than 150 words, but never fall short of 150 words. My humble suggestion is to maintain uniformity. That is, you'll be attempting 4 questions of the same marks. For that matter, it would be ideal if you could maintain the same length. Okay, that won't be very easy, but still you can have a try. Okay, it's an 8 mark question, so you can write for 1 to 1.5 pages. All right, yes. So let's quickly move through these questions. There are 5 options given. The first question is from Macbeth. Undoubtedly, it's a question from Macbeth. Macbeth falls under block 1 of our official study material. As you know, it's a Shakespearean tragedy and we have discussed Macbeth in detail. So when you attempt an annotation question, that is when a passage is given to you, you will have to explain the context. Firstly, you will have to identify from which work it has been taken. Now you will identify these lines are taken from the Shakespearean drama or the Shakespearean tragedy titled Macbeth. Then you will give a brief introduction to Macbeth and thereafter you will start elaborating on the context. Okay, that is how you must have written even for your TMA. I believe so. So moving on to the second question. So this is also related to Macbeth. Okay, remember the sleepwalking scene that I mentioned when I taught you Macbeth, Act 5, Scene 1. So it would be of great value if you could actually identify the act and scene. But I understand it won't be very easy. But if it is some significant scene like the sleepwalking scene, please mention the scene's name and also the act and scene number if possible. All the rest the same, just the way I explained in case of the first question, but the context might differ. Okay, yeah, it would be great if you could mention who's uttering these two. Yeah, now moving on to the third question. So this is undoubtedly a question from Arms and the Man. It is a play written by George Bernard Shaw. So you'll have to identify the work and explain a bit about it, then write about the context and explain these lines in detail. Alright, and moving on to the next one, the fourth question. I perish by this people which I made. Okay, this is a passage taken from Tennyson's Morte d'Arthur. Same is the case with the fifth one. Alright, so it is important for you to identify the work from which these passages are taken. Dear learners, trust me when I say this, you people are very lucky. In the sense, you just have to study 4 works. Just 4 works, within which the probability of they giving an annotation question from block 2, the novel, is very unlikely. That is, most probably you wouldn't get annotation from block 2. Then the only choices or the options would be block 1, 3 or 4. That is Macbeth, Arms and the Man or Morte d'Arthur. And in case of Morte d'Arthur, you'll easily identify. If it is a poetry, it would be easily distinguished from the drama. May that be Macbeth or Arms and the Man. So if you see such lines, you can easily identify it's from Morte d'Arthur. And if it is Macbeth too, most probably there would be annotation questions from Macbeth. The probability of them asking questions from Macbeth is much more when compared to Bernard Shaw's Arms and the Man. Nevertheless, there will be at least one question from Arms and the Man and two or more questions from Mortady Other. So this is an easy way to actually identify the works. Once you identify the work, half work is done, because you can actually write an introduction and even a brief idea regarding this particular work. Now the only challenge is to identify these particular lines and to elaborate on it. So that would be challenging. You need to have detailed study. For that matter, please be aware of these passages given in your study material. Whenever you see some passage mentioned or emphasized in your study material, please be prepared. Okay, that's all regarding the annotation questions. Any doubts? So now we'll proceed further to question number 2. Remember, there are 4 questions in total. Questions 1 to 4. Okay, the first one is the annotation type. The second question is basically related to short notes. Okay, I'll read the question for you. Write short notes on any 4 of the following in around 100 words each. And you have 5 questions. Just the way you attempted the first question, you will have to write 4 out of 5. The difference is that here the questions are of just 6 marks. So you are expected to write a minimum of 1 page. For question number 1, 1.5 to 2 pages. For question number 2, 100 words, so around a page. Alright. Let me once again remind you that it depends on your handwriting. And it is not the pages that matter, but the content. Alright. Yes. Now let's have a look at the questions. Question number 6. The significance of the Porter scene in Macbeth. I remember explaining this scene. It is considered as if a comic scene. Alright. And our text gives detailed analysis on that scene. So this is part of unit 2 of block 1. Okay. You have straight or direct answer mentioned in your study material. Now moving on to the next question. Question number 7. The influence of Ibsen on the drama of Bernard Shaw. Obviously, you know this question is from block 2 and it is related to Bernard Shaw. This question is from block 3 and it is related to George Bernard Shaw. So, as part of unit 9 of block 3, we learn about the life and works of George Bernard Shaw, and there you have references to the influence of Ibsen. This question is important. There is this probability of them actually repeating such a question. So please make sure that you study this. So moving on to the next question, that is question number 8. The literary landscape of Wessex in the novels of Thomas Hardy. So this is also a very direct question from block 2. It deals with the life and works of Thomas Hardy. So he has written this novel Far from the Madding Crowd that we have for detailed study. So this answer falls under unit 6, page number 85. I suppose the page number is same for all the students. So under 6.4 section, you can see Hardy's Wessex. So I can explain this concept for you. That is just like we have Malgudi as if a fictional place in the writings of R.K. Narayan. Similarly, in case of Hardy, he has actually created a fictionalized place called Wessex. And most of his novels are set in Wessex. So you can explain on that concept. Moving on to the next question, question number 9. Tennyson's Idylls of the King and the Arthurian Legend. So this is a question from the background and is related to the last block, block 4, that deals with Tennyson and his very important poem Mortady Other. You can find these ideas as part of unit 14 of block 4. It's all straight questions. when you prepare itself, you can straight away find the answers. And finally, the last question from this section, question number 10, Victorian conflict as expressed in the poetry of Tennyson. So this is also a question from the background and is related to the works of Alfred Tennyson. You can straight away move on to the details mentioned in block 4 and find the correct answer for this particular question. So remember, you don't have to write all the 5 questions. You just have to write 4 out of 5 questions. Alright. Now let's move on to question 3.